this lecture, we are going to tackle the main approaches that can be used to forecast the demand, namely time series approaches, causal approaches, qualitative approaches. Let's start with the time series approaches. The forecasting for the future demand, Ft+1, is based on the analysis and the extrapolation of the time series of the past demand. The function linking the forecasted and the past demand depends on the specific model. There are two basic alternatives: models based only on extrapolation, for example moving average and exponential smoothing, or models based on both analysis and extrapolation from the time series, like Holt-Winter's model that you will tackle in one of the next lectures. Before making the sales forecast, it is necessary to analyze the past behavior of the time series to identify the eventual presence of trend and seasonality. The time series approaches have different pros. First of all, they are relatively simple, since they are only based on past series of the demand. They are based on historical data usually available. They are easy to be automated and updated. And finally, they give a good level of understanding of the demand behavior, because they are able to identify trend and seasonality. On the other hand, they have also some cons. They do not consider the external factors. This means that if the demand is affected by an external factor that will change, the model will not be able to forecast the demand correctly. They are not suitable for products with no pattern or with a few or no data on past demand, for example, new products. They require a long setup period to tune the model. The second category of models that we will see are the causal approaches. The forecast for the future demand, Ft+1, is based on the identification of a functional relationship between the demand and other variables influencing the demand. The link can be contemporaneous, and in this case it is necessary to be able to forecast the variable because the effect on the demand is sudden, or can have a time lag or delay between the cause and the effect, and in this case it can be sufficient to use the historical data of the independent variable. The main steps to be followed to identify and use a causal link between a group of independent variables and the demand are the identification of the independent variables, for example price, investments in advertising, promotion, temperature, weather, and so on and so forth. The identification of the links between the variables, equation linear, squared, exponential, and so on and so forth. The assessment of the equation parameters. The forecasting of the dependent variable demand is obtained thanks to the future forecast or historical data of the independent variables. As an example, in the figure here, we see the values of the demand and the respective values of the independent variable. Through a regression analysis, we can understand if the function is able to explain the link between the dependent and the independent variable, determining the values of the coefficients. The main pros of this category of models are: they take into account the external factors that influence or explain the demand, like price and weather conditions. Higher intelligence on the factors explaining the demand. Possibility to integrate and or correct the forecast based on time series. The main cons, on the other hand, are: they require a heavy data analysis, since a functional relationship has to be built and validated. It's necessary to be able to forecast the causal factors better than the demand. In other words, there is a shift of the problem, from the forecasting of the demand of the products to the forecasting of the independent variables. The third and last category of models that we will go through in this lecture are the qualitative approaches. Among them, the most diffused are Salesforce. Marketing prepares and modifies the demand forecast based on the information on the sales that are gathered and elaborated on the basis of a bottom-up approach: salesman, area manager, and marketing director. Delphi method: interaction of a group of experts through a questionnaire that interactively reports the answers step by step, given anonymously, till a consensus, the most possible unanimous, is reached. Expert panel, a group of people belonging to different functions, marketing, design, production, finance, is in charge of making the whole forecast. Market surveys, mail or interviews to a sample of customers to understand their purchasing behavior. Analogy with other products, that's the identification of products with characteristics that are similar to the new product that will be launched. The main pros of the qualitative approaches are: they can take into account all the factors that have never happened and can influence the demand. They are able to create consensus, involvement and ownership on the output of the forecasting process, since they are usually based on open discussion among people skilled on the topic. On the other hand, the main cons are: a limited capability of quantitative analysis, a risk of misleading correlations to support the thesis, excess of confidence regarding the conclusion, excess of conformity among the group members. A forecasting system should use a set of forecasting techniques, both quantitative and qualitative, not only one. The forecasting techniques that we have seen in this lecture, that are the time series, the causal and the qualitative approaches, are in fact complementary and can be jointly used to forecast the demand of the products sold by a company. As an example, time series approaches and causal approaches can be jointly used to forecast the demand of those products for which a time series of at least 2 years is available and whose demand is affected of external factors already identified and that can be predicted. If among these we have critical items, for example new items or items that have to be sold in new markets, it could be appropriate to forecast their demand also leveraging qualitative approaches.